Welcome back, everyone, to another broadcast of In the Trenches. I'm excited to have Chris Badgett on the call today. Chris has been with us on In the Trenches before, and we talked about his software, LifterLMS, and went into a lot of detail around the topic of how do you make sure that your students succeed when they purchase one of your online courses, which I think is an interesting topic in and of itself. So you didn't get a chance to listen to that one, go back. That was episode 93, I think. No, that was episode 95. 95. Good correction. Thank you, Chris. So episode 95, check it out with Chris Badgett. If you're doing anything online course related, that's a fantastic episode. But I brought him back on today because I wanted to talk about business in general, but also specific to him, how he was able to build LifterLMS, a little bit about what he was doing before, during, and what he's continuing to do now, the ups and downs and the trials and tribulations of actually growing something, software or otherwise. So, Chris, thank you for being on In the Trenches with us again.
Thanks for having me, Tom. It's great to be back.
Yeah, it's always a pleasure. Love catching up with you. So take me through this. Like, we've talked about courses before and everything you've done that, but I don't think we got much of a backstory, or at least we didn't go too in depth into LifterLMS and kind of how you've been able to build this platform and grow it. You're in a competitive marketplace from my perspective when I look at learning management systems, when I look at online education software and tools like this. But I think you've done a remarkable job of being able to stand out even against some really heavyweight competitors. So I don't know where the best place to start is, but maybe you can start from the beginning a little bit, or even just highlight some of the big wins or even big losses in the early stages and kind of how you've grown from there.
That's awesome. Well, I think to provide some context, like where we are now, LifterLMS is a profitable business. I've got a team. The products are selling every day. We have free product. We have paid add-ons. We have bundles of products. We have done-for-you service built around the product. But all of that took quite a while to build and become sustainable. The LifterLMS project is 3 to 4 years old. And then my journey really as an online entrepreneur, I'm almost 40, but I didn't start my web agency until about 7 years ago. So my entrepreneur journey is about 7 years, really. And you could call it, 7 years to overnight success or whatever, but it's been a tough road. And we've had some wins and we've had some failures. And I'm the non-technical co-founder, and I have it's a software product business, but I don't know how to write a single line of code. So there's a bunch of things that go into that and why that's helpful and not helpful, and how that story evolved. But just to kind of bring it back, I'd encourage you guys to listen to episode 95. I talk a little bit about my background and how I used to manage a sled dog tour business on a glacier in Alaska that you could only get to by helicopter. So a lot of times people ask, how did you get into technology? So my entrepreneur journey really just started as an unexplainable obsession and passion for publishing online that I just slowly started developing a habit of learning how to build websites, discovering WordPress, which means non-technical people like myself could plug tools together and make things happen. And I really discovered that I was an entrepreneur. I didn't realize it. I didn't realize it when I was younger. I always followed my passion and had a problem with authority and all that kind of stuff that you kind of notice as a common thread in entrepreneurs sometimes. But I didn't really realize I was an entrepreneur until, I was in my 30s. So, but the starting point for me has to do with when I left Alaska. I almost missed the birth of my first daughter because of a storm, and a helicopter could not fly. And it was actually my daughter came a little bit earlier than we anticipated, my first one. And we thought that I was going to do one more cycle, 5 days on the ice field before I came back down and stayed down in town before to be ready for birth. But luckily, a storm kept me down one extra day, and then my daughter was born the next day or whatever. So it's just in that whole moment where I really realized I needed to change career. Even though I love what I did and everything, I just wanted to kind of be a little bit more available and around. And of course, I want to be a big part of my daughter's life. And I've always chased my passions. I mean, that's how I ended up in Alaska. I'm from a college town in North Carolina. So I have a thing for like chasing after things that are interesting to me. But it's often filled with, some lean times, not much money coming in. I've lived in the back of my car at one point. I've done lots of different things. And, that changes what you can do, how you can bootstrap when you have people depending on you and stuff like that. But I definitely had some lean times in the early days of my web agency. I've done, product launches that I made 5 times as much in, a day as I did my first year in business as a freelancer. So like those extremes happen. But it's the thing with me is like, I really don't give up almost to a fault. But the reason that exists is just that passion fuels it. I care deeply about learning. I really enjoy the team I've built and the customer base I work with, and I like the problems that we're trying to solve. So that's what kind of fuels me through it.
Yeah, so you mentioned that you're a co-founder, you're non-technical. So I think that's always been interesting to me because I'm also non-technical. I don't know how to code at all. I mean, maybe real basic stuff, but I mean, I might as well say not at all. I'm illiterate when it comes to coding, but I've always been fascinated by software as a service, and maybe someday getting into that. So from that vantage point, what were the biggest challenges for you moving into a capacity where you're like leading a team to build something, but you are not somebody who could actually go in there and change the code and not, do that part of it? And like, what are the challenges with that? And also maybe then on the flip side, what are some of the benefits that you've seen?
Absolutely. I would say some of the biggest challenges of being a non-technical co-founder are sometimes it's like frustrating because certain things seem like they take a long time. But that's often just because I realize in my experience anyways, it's just a lack of depth of understanding like the fundamental, code architecture below what makes some things more challenging to execute than others. So over time, I've gotten a lot better about dealing with that and, and also like just getting started and not knowing how long it's going to take because really good web developers, they don't always know like it's a creative process for them. So they have to like kind of get into it. So you don't, the business manager wants what's the timeline and how much can I spend on this? But it doesn't always work that way. So it's about making really smart investments in strategy, like if you're going to, forge your way into the unknown. But that can be frustrating. Sometimes, not being able to make a quick fix, like if there's like some spelling error somewhere or, something there's a mess up in the e-commerce system or something like that that's really important and needs to get done right away. And, you just not being dependent on outside help can be challenging. But overall, I would say it's the biggest blessing I have. I see it way more of a blessing than a curse. My technical co-founder, Thomas, is a brilliant web developer. He's also, sales and marketing are not his strength. And that's a skill set that I've developed. So basically, I mean, a funny way I tell the story is he hasn't listened to a single one of my podcasts and I haven't read a single line of his code, but we work great together. So
that's pretty funny.
Yeah.
So when you guys got started, was it just you two then?
No, we actually had a third partner. So we also had we went through the process of where it ended up not working out, but Thomas and I decided to keep going together. So when we started it, there was actually 2 non-technical co-founders, myself and another guy, Joshua, who's a great guy. We're still friends to this day. So we were able to navigate that whole change like in a way that didn't, kill the friendship or whatever. So that was a whole challenge and part of the growth process. But it wasn't. So basically the way it started is when I first started freelancing after I left Alaska, I opened up my own web agency called Badgett Media, just my last name, and I started building websites. The first website I sold, I sold it for $300 or $500, and that was my first paying customer or whatever. At the peak of our web agency, which we no longer do, we use the web agency to fund and bootstrap the product. That's the tip from my experience on if you're going to be if you need to be responsible and like cap the downside a little bit on terms of you need to be making money while you're bootstrapping a product and you need time and runway. We did that by having an agency that actually specialized in the same niche that our product served, which became high-end membership sites and custom web applications for courses and membership sites. But this is like the ultra high end. So some of our web projects there, some of our clients spent over six figures with us. And we didn't, our minimum project spend would be quite high by a lot of standards. But it started, for me at Badgett Media, it started with just me by myself selling services, putting websites together for $500. Later, I merged my agency with Thomas and Joshua's company, Codebox, and then we became a three-way partnership. So that's kind of the origin story of that.
And that's interesting. So you guys, so you didn't kind of start this LifterLMS as we see it today necessarily from scratch, but you guys had your own kind of assets that you brought to the table, combined them, and then built LifterLMS, which I mean isn't that much different, but I'm just curious, like, does that kind of grasp the nature of the origins?
Yeah, we were already solving the same problems in a very bespoke, custom, high-end web development kind of marketing web agency kind of way, and then we really wanted to build a product and that could just change the business model.
Okay, interesting. So had you guys become experts insofar as you want to kind of accept that term, but we'll go with it, like experts in essentially like learning management systems and stuff like that, like, and is that what took you down that path of moving toward online education and that being kind of your software solution that you want to focus on?
This is kind of ties into one of my strengths as a non-technical co-founder, and part of the place that all my passion for it comes. I'm also an online course creator. And I think we talked about this in the Trenches episode, but I started building, my first online course project was with my wife for gardening and permaculture courses. And we would even fly, like one time we flew to Costa Rica to film a 2-week permaculture design course and basically turned this really cool workshop that was going on in the middle of the jungle into an online course product. And we operated as like the publisher model. So I'm basically the same as our customer. Like I really understand our customer because I am also one of them. And so that's part of how we became experts in that. And the other is it just so happened that as a web agency, clients with decent budgets who were looking to do high-end marketing automation, we used to do a lot of work in the Infusionsoft community, and they needed a front-end website, e-commerce, membership site products and stuff going on, and they weren't happy with off-the-shelf solutions. They wanted it custom built around their exact specifications. It just kind of evolved that those are the clients that could afford our prices and that we could actually really serve well, because between the three of us as partners, our understanding, our ability to combine the technology, really focus in on the business problems that we're solving and build simple strategies around that, but deliver powerful results while doing best in breed marketing automation and things of that nature. That just is just how it evolved. And so all that focus just really, it just became like membership sites and online courses and LMSs. And to this day, people often ask me, like, how does your system compare to some popular, ed tech, educational technology LMS system? And my answer is usually, I don't know. I haven't used it. So for me, when we like build features and design the software and architect the product, we're just kind of starting at the fundamental principles that course builders need. We're not doing like a features arms race and starting by looking at the competition. We almost have never even looked at them, or even we just focus on the business problems and the people we're helping, and we run our own race. And that's kind of been our strategy, and that's how it's evolved. But our expertise is born from that experience and those relationships, more than research.
Right. That's interesting. Okay, so take me through this. When you developed like version 1.0 of LifterLMS, let's actually start a little bit before version 1.0 was actually like released, maybe before it was even a beta or whatever. But when you actually began work on what is now LifterLMS, from the moment you started working on it to the moment you released a version where you started getting paid for it, what was that? How long was that? And what was that time period like?
Yeah, that's a great question. So it released to the public in the fall of 2014. And it really only took about a month to build the first version, which is amazing. And this comes from the original. We had another developer who was working on it and leading up the development of LifterLMS, the product itself, while my technical co-founder was kind of holding down the fort of client services in terms of the development needs over there. So we built it in a month, but what was most important to us, and specifically my partner at the time, Joshua, and myself on more of the marketing side, is we wanted to pre-sell it and validate demand. So we can build awesome websites and stuff like that, but we actually just used a lead pages to build the first version of the LifterLMS website, build our interest list, and really just start, listing out the features that are going to be in the product before a single line of code was written. And that whole process of like kind of pre-selling it, marketing it, building the prototype, we just had about a month head start on the marketing than the development side. So that was really only about a 2-month process from idea to launch.
Wow, that's pretty fast. So were you able to get paying customers then when you first launched?
Yeah, we got 42 of them.
That's awesome. So what did you guys do? What was the secret sauce behind kind of getting that early notification list, or however you guys wanted to find that group of people, like of that group, the 42 became paying customers?
Yeah, so at the time we didn't really have a big email list or anything like that. Like right now, this is being recorded in 2017 in the summer, and our email list is about 20,000 people right now. But when that first launch happened, I think we only had about 500 people on our email list. But basically, even though we were, pretty darn good at marketing automation and all that stuff for clients, we hadn't necessarily over time built up our own email list and that kind of thing. So if you know who Jason Cohen is, the CEO of WP Engine, he has a saying, something about how you really have to tooth and claw for your first customer, your early adopters or whatever. And that's exactly what we did. We did everything in the book, tooth and claw. So I had some old contacts from Badgett Media. I had, who had subscribed to my blog. I had people in my gardening courses. Some of our earlier people just happened to also be students of mine that decided, hey, maybe I can create these courses too, like Chris. And we did all kinds of stuff like, if you want like a really specific tactic, I really like this one. I still use this one to this day whenever we do a launch, is I use the King Sumo giveaways plugin. So basically it's an incentivized social sharing thing where, you can have a landing page and people join the giveaway to win a free copy of your software. And for every friend they refer, they get more entries into the drawing. I still do this to this day every time we do a product launch, and it has a huge spike in our list. And then a lot of it was relationships. Some of our first, high agency clients, they became early customers. And then, figuring out ways to reward the early adopters, so having a really compelling offer around like taking good care of people and locking in pricing and that sort of thing is also really helpful to get that that early launch. But there really wasn't a magic bullet. If I could do it all over again, I would probably, like from the beginning, I would invest more in some kind of relationship strategy and try to get, more access to somebody's audience and figure out a way to deliver value to them, and so that it makes sense that they can kind of help seed the launch. But that's really hard to do when you're unproven and you don't have anything yet. So it's like this catch-22. So we're just really scrappy. We don't give up. And then, and a lot of it is just trying all kinds of different things across all three categories of sales, from, prospecting, content marketing, and relationships. Like, we did all kinds of experiments, and then we just look for what works. And if it worked, then we do more of that.
Well, walk me through that process, because I'm curious about that. I have a couple questions, some of the other topics you brought up, but that in particular, how do you guys approach that, the idea of conducting an experiment? And then, like, take me through your process, the thought process, how you implement it, how you, like, get that feedback that lets you know, yeah, this was useful, or this was lucrative, we should keep doing this, or no, let's try something else.
Well, most people listening to this have probably read The Lean Startup. If you haven't, I highly recommend it. But basically, that's what we do. We were always like pivoting. Like, the first version of the product, it's just constant improvement and iteration. And in order to do to double down on what's working or pivot off of something that's not working, you have to have a way to gauge success. So, what, like, as an example, like paid acquisition, we always do, if we're going to do Facebook ads, we're going to have a tracking link that you can set up for free. Just Google UTM tracking link, so that we can look at our Google Analytics and see if, a link somewhere, and not just for paid ads, but it could be a guest post or whatever. We're always instrumenting our software or our marketing website and assets so that we can look at the data intelligently. Just like that King Sumo giveaway thing, that has statistics in it. You can see who's referring, and, like, you can tell right away if it's working or not. You can look at the email list that you get from that and compare it to, do these email addresses, did these actual also equal orders? Like, is this a functioning experiment? One of the big ones for me, I'm actually a pretty introverted person, pretty private person. I live in the country, and one of the things against me is I'm in on the coast of Maine. I'm the farthest from Silicon Valley that you could get in the U.S. anyways, but I'm in this tech space. But with the internet and all these tools, it's debatable as to whether or not that matters, especially if you're not necessarily trying to build in the startup world, what they call a unicorn. But for me, I knew that relationships was a weakness in our marketing strategy, because we just weren't really in the network. So one of the things I did intentionally is I found an event for WordPress product companies. It was in Mexico. It's called Cabo Press. I'm going back for the third time this year. And it just forced me to get in a room, actually in a beautiful resort, with a bunch of players in my space who weren't necessarily direct competitors. But it was a way to forge high quality relationships quickly. And that was one of the best marketing business decisions I've ever done. And it's not like this kind of I'll scratch your back if you scratch mine kind of thing. These are like real relationships and friendships and things that evolve that, if you're an isolated entrepreneur, if you don't do that, if you don't figure out a way to do that in person or online, you're just missing out on this whole kind of network. And it also helps with that, the things when we have our conversations, behind closed doors about like, hey, what's working, what's not, or, work-life balance issues and all that kind of stuff. There's just so much value that comes out of it. So relationships it can be very powerful and underutilized, it seems.
Yeah, that's interesting. I completely agree. I think they're underutilized though, because it's not it's usually not direct or one for one, or not as easy to calculate ROI on something like that, right?
It's also extremely scary sometimes. I mean, like if we're going to talk about like the first time I went, I felt like, the small fish or whatever. And not that it's not like I don't have an ego problem or anything like that, but I was like, oh, is my company big enough to be here or whatever? Like, and, as Lifter becomes more and more successful, it doesn't feel like that anymore. But I remember like there was that moment of fear or panic, like, oh, am I worthy enough to go to this event or develop these relationships? And once I got there the very first time, all those fears and worries and everything immediately just went right out the door. And it was a great experience, but it can be scary to do that kind of stuff.
Where's that fine line between product development, like adding new features or improving features, and sales for you guys? Like, how do you approach that?
Yeah, so we kind of subscribed loosely in software development to what's known as agile development. And so in the early days, I was technically what's known as the product owner, which means I'm the one who builds the bridge between the developers and the market demand, and also the needs of the marketing department and all that. It had to go through me, and I was the final call. And it was a perfect spot for me to be, because I understand sales and marketing. My unique strength in the business partnership had to do with like really client and customer empathy and understanding business problems. Like that was my unique strength. So I would always just really always bring it back to like the problems we're solving. Are we solving the right problems? Are we doing it efficiently? That's how we figure out what goes into the product. Because what's really scary, if you just like put every single request that you hear bubbling up from your marketplace, from the public, from your customers, it can get really bloated and really crazy and unruly, and you'll run out of money and your head will explode. That's my experience. So you have to have a filter. And somebody told me in the early days that constraints are your friends. So there's only so much time till the launch day that we pre-scheduled. There's only so much money that we can invest into the product while we're bootstrapping at the various phases. There's only so much money we can invest into like paid acquisition. So once you get really real about those constraints and look at them like as your ally and not the enemy, and not as like an excuse, like I don't have enough money, then it forces you to be really creative and focus on what works. And I do things all the time, like I'll survey my audience in a Facebook poll, and we just released a new add-on called Private Areas. I put out a survey about it. Somebody mentioned that, hey, you guys should consider building something that coaches can use as a paid upsell to courses where they can have a private page per student. I ran that by my audience. It like took off like wildfire, and we just pivoted our product roadmap and like built that next in line. So you have to have validation, and just deal with the constraints, and just protect the purity of the product in terms of not being bloated, and making sure that it that it really fits your market, and that you're at the end of the day, for us, when we're making a feature decision, I always think about how will this affect the end learner? Like I care the most about not just my customer or potential customer, but about their customers, like their students. If it helps that student get results, I will consider building it. So that's one of our filters as well, is especially if your software product is business to business. It's you kind of just got to leapfrog over your customer and go to their customer and really take care of that person. Everybody else wins as long as you get that right.
Where do you guys get most of your, where's most of your growth coming from right now? Is it from referrals? Is it from, content marketing? Like what's really moving the needle for you guys right now?
It kind of comes in phases. So from our biggest growth lever after the initial tooth and claw to get traction and decide to continue on the product, like, okay, there's something here. And, in the early days, the next major growth lever was when we actually changed our business model and made our core product free. And then what that does is, by having a free WordPress plugin, you get this incredible distribution through WordPress itself. Even today, it can be a little confusing, but I just read at WordPress.com, which is a little different than the kind that you host on your own website, just opened it up to allow regular plugins, like free plugins, to be installed on it before, which wasn't possible before, which means we're going to get even more distribution. But anyways, in a more general sense, we started it paid, and then we pivoted it to free, and then did paid add-ons. Very quickly, we replaced our revenue levels back to what they were and started growing at a much more accelerated rate. That was the major growth level there. And it's painful to switch your business model like that, to go from paid to free. So that's one. And then later we got into bundles, which then accelerated the model more. So instead of just individual add-ons, you can get them all for instead of buy each for $99, you can get this bundle for $3.99 or that bundle for this other price. But for right now, the main engine of growth for us right now, a lot of things, all that kind of toothing and clawing, and we have a large effort on content marketing. It seems like it's just snowballing and compounding on itself right now, and there's just a lot of growth coming off of our content. And that's, for me, from a content marketing perspective, our biggest content channels that we do well at are YouTube. Even if videos don't get a lot of view, if they're like highly relevant and highly targeted, you can get a lot. So we've got over 300 videos, I think, on our YouTube channel. We use free courses on our website. That's our number one driver of sales, actually. So one of the things I'm doing right now, I just set this up, or when this comes out, it'll be totally launched, but we basically have an opt-in that's powered by something called Opt-in Monster that's spread across multiple web properties we own, like our blog site and our podcast site, all powered from one opt-in system. But basically people opt in, and it through an API, it shoots that person to our CRM ActiveCampaign, and then it adds them to a free course on a different website about how to use LifterLMS and its auto account creation and all this stuff. So I'm just pouring gasoline on the fire of, basically using free courses to demo our product. And then that's our number one driver of sales, month after month, year after year. When people look at the demo, when I look in Google Analytics, that's where they are right before they buy. So I would encourage you to spend a lot of effort on your demo. And for us, it's an automated demo. It's like a course. So that's what's really working for us right now in terms of, and it always has. And for whatever reason, I've noticed this. It's common that software companies especially typically don't make great instruction manuals or tutorials. It's often some other entrepreneur who builds the, hey, learn how to use ScreenFlow or learn how to use Evernote or learn whatever. It's not the same company that actually makes the tool. So I find that an interesting fact just from a case study standpoint. But yeah, I mean, focus on the demo. That, like, show, don't tell. As much as you can show, that's in my experience what seems to really drive the sales.
That's interesting. Now that obviously is immediately applicable for software. Do you think that that's something that's like, can course creators use something like this? In terms of like that demo feature, like what would be an equivalent for somebody selling digital products or for a coach or a consultant selling services? Do you think that there's like an equivalent type of demo approach somebody could take like that to
absolutely,
yeah, generate leads and get sales?
Yeah, like if I'm advising somebody on this, the general strategy I go to is, because it can be overwhelming to like make a lot of content, especially if you're on the hook to like develop more than just like one blog post or whatever. So what I advise people to do is write 5 blog posts. I'm talking to somebody at the very beginning of their content marketing strategy. Write 5 blog posts. After you're done with that, then you can create what I call an email mini course, which is like 3 to 5 parts where they opt in and you're teaching them by email around whatever it is your information products or your coaching is all about. And then at the end of that email mini course, then you kind of up the ante into a free, short course on your website. And then from there, you can go into a paid course, and then you can package multiple courses into a membership. You can add coaching to your courses, and you can just build your business model on top of that. So that's what I recommend. So anybody in any industry can have a free course. There's always some kind of education. If you can have a blog, you can have a free course. It's just about thinking differently around really focusing in on a specific result or something that people need to know. The way I like to describe it, there's 3 types of courses. There is a resource course, which is just like a body of knowledge. So if I'm teaching you how to build a business, I might just have a free resource course on my site about like let's say it's a marketing course, like the 10 laws of marketing, break them at your own peril. But instead of doing like an ebook, and you can still do that stuff too. I do recommend that as well. But you can just add something that's more structured, like a course as well to the funnel. But any business has something to teach. Like I do, like one of our, this is kind of a counterintuitive way that people use our software. We actually have a lot of people who in the real estate industry, and they're creating free courses. The real estate agents or broker, more likely the broker owners of the real estate company, they're creating like free first-time home buyer courses. They're creating courses on how to resell your home for maximum value. Financing, home mortgage 101 courses. So they're using free courses for lead generation, and they're a service business. So you can put a course anywhere.
Yeah, that's interesting. And I guess I'm curious, when you implement this for yourselves, like you guys go out and do this, like I guess the difference would be, so the free course, I get that conceptually. Demo, so it doesn't actually have to be something where you're on it live with somebody, as I'm gathering this. Like it could actually just be fully automated. That's what you guys have gotten to. Is that correct?
Yeah, so like our main course is a passive video course, which basically each lesson is a video tour of a feature of the product, the free product or some of the paid add-ons. So yeah, it's a curated, organized walkthrough of basically the offer of the business itself. And this is one thing I do, and I still do to this day, is on our contact page, I have a thing where anybody in the world can schedule a 15-minute call with me. And I have to limit it on my calendar, otherwise it would fill up too much. So I only really actually offer it like on Monday afternoons and a few other blocks, like isolated blocks in my calendar. That has been a really powerful thing for me for sales, especially for our higher end offers, because people want to talk to a live human being, but we can't necessarily have the phone ringing off the hook. So, doing things that don't scale, even now, even though we're really stable, I still do that. I still, people do schedule that with me. And that's a way not only for me to close business, but also just to keep, it's important to me to always have my finger on the pulse of like what my potential customers are asking for, what the problems they're trying to solve, or like the issues they're having with the other tool that they're trying to get away from. Those calls are invaluable to me. I'll probably do it forever. So, but it doesn't scale at all. And sometimes
how many of those calls do you do a week or a month?
A week, probably about, I limit them to 15 minutes and I do about 15 of them. 10 to 15 a week.
Wow. And then, and does the person, do you schedule these with them, or are these just random calls like you're doing to customers?
No, they schedule them. I have the whole scheduling system all automated with Calendly and Zoom, and a Zoom meeting room that I go into. And it's on my, and they just appear on my calendar, but, and people can call in or whatever, but it's kind of clear that it's on like a pre-sales contact page. So there's a contact form, and then below it, there's the ability to schedule a 15-minute call with me.
That's really cool. I find that interesting. I've heard that from some other people too. Very few, but who take the time to do that, to get on calls with customers and stuff like that, and just talk through those kind of things. I think what great market research. So let me ask you.
Go ahead.
I
just want to add one more.
Yeah.
I do, as a habit, I also answer one support ticket a day myself. I always do that just because I want to know, like, on that side too. I'm not just trying to close the sale. It's also like figuring out like how can we do better with onboarding, or what don't people understand, or what's not working out for people.
Yeah, that's interesting. So let me ask this. What was like one of the biggest like challenges? Because hearing it, you're like, oh yeah, you guys got off to a good start, doing well, growing. Have you had any rough patches, and what have those been like for you guys? Yeah,
this is where I would say for me, it's like the hardest part, but I can persevere, and I can spin things, and because I have a background in like the whole wilderness survival, camping, digital nomad traveling thing, I'm uniquely qualified to go very low income through periods if I need to. So the hardest part for me was just in those early days of the product, when we're really not profitable and we're taking a lot of the extra, almost all of the extra cash out of the agency and pumping it into building up the product. There was time there where I was living, and I'm the sole, I'm the main, my wife does a few things like with our online course business, but our gardening course business, but I'm the primary provider for my household, and we had to get by on very less. So we had very low income for about 6 months. So I made a strategic decision, and I saw it happening. The initial 42 customers was great, but that's not going to, put food on the table. And we still had to keep delivering on all the promises we made in the marketing and all that stuff. So I made a strategic decision on just getting things down so that I could live off of approximately $1,000 a month. And what I did, I took what could be seen as the most difficult situation, and I spun it into what some would say is a good situation, but it was still hard and very trying and lean times. So what I did is I moved out of my the rental. We were renting in Montana at the time, and I went to the the RV dealer, and I got a travel trailer for $0 down. So that's a really nice brand new $200 a month travel trailer. I went to the car dealership and got a vehicle that could tow it, $0 down, $200 a month payments. Now we're at $400. And I got my laptop, I got my wife, I got my kids, and we hit the road. And we traveled all over the country, mostly camping for free, staying at friends' houses. Sometimes work it, like we'd go to an organic farm and post up, and I'd be in the trailer working with my mobile hotspot. My wife would be working off our stay, like, helping harvest vegetables and doing all that stuff. So we took what sounds challenging and actually just spun it into something. And it was through doing that. And we never ate out ever, even though we were passing through all these nice places. We got a national park pass, but we, lots of beans and rice and just hanging out together, lots of long days working. But it's really challenging as an entrepreneur, especially when you've got people depending on you, when you have to really, in the early days for me, dropping down to really low income levels. But that's how I did it. So we swing through friends and family, post up for a little bit. And I think there is a way to do it more intelligently or more smarter, or maybe your product does better when it initially launches. But I had to play the hand I was dealt, and I didn't want to give up, and I'm glad I didn't. So that's what we did.
That's awesome, man. It just goes to show you, it's like I don't think there's really such a thing as success unless it's like hard fought and hard won in a lot of ways. Because again, if it's easy, then somebody else is going to do it, and then all of a sudden it gets competitive, it gets difficult again. So I think that's just a great learning point, great learning lesson, and a great point of reflection for anybody who's listening to realize, yeah, sometimes this stuff is this path is tough, and it's not supposed to be easy. So I really appreciate your insights on that.
Yeah. Well, thank you.
Well, we're coming up to the top of the hour here, Chris. Where can people reach out to find you, connect with you, maybe scope out LifterLMS as well? The floor is yours.
You can find LifterLMS at lifterlms.com. And if you find the contact page, you can find that 15-minute scheduled call link if you want to talk to me. I love talking to other entrepreneurs, and because I know what it's like, and I just enjoy connecting with other entrepreneurs. So feel free to connect with me there. I also have a podcast for online course creators and membership site owners called LMS Cast. That's at lmscast.com. And yeah, those are the best ways to connect with me. I'm also on Twitter and Facebook if you want to connect on social as well. So thanks for having me on the show, Tom. I really appreciate it.
Of course, Chris. And I'm sure we'll have you back on again in the future. And I appreciate you being on with us again on In the Trenches. So thank you so much. And everybody's listening, definitely check it out. Go scope out the original conversation I had with Chris. It's episode 95. And when this comes out, of course, definitely listen, share, and check out what Chris is doing over at LifterLMS. It's really great stuff. Thanks a lot, Chris. Appreciate having you on.
Thank you.
And that wraps up another broadcast of In the Trenches. If you enjoyed today's podcast, please do me a favor and go to tommorkes.com/iTunes. That's TOMMORKES.com/iTunes, and leave a rating and review for In the Trenches. Not only do I read and appreciate every review, but it helps spread the word of this podcast and allows me to continue to get on great guests. So thank you for your support, and I'll catch you on the next broadcast of In the Trenches.